is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Propability for UFC 286. We have an absolute banger of a card and an absolute banger of a show. WEEZY, I know you're on a ton of spots already. I'm on my fair share of spots as well, so we have a lot to talk about and a lot of fights to talk about. 15 fights on this card. As a content creator, I'm not a fan of these 15 fight weeks, but as a bettor and as a fan, yeah, I like 15 fights. You know, more fights, the better, right? So we're here with WEEZY. WEEZY, what is up? You looking forward to this card? And you looking forward to the show?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to this show. I've looked forward to this show more than a lot of others just because there's already a lot of spots that are sticking out here on my prop template. And I love it when Bet Online gets the lines out on Monday afternoon because we're already kind of prepared. I've already done a lot of tape study. I've already got my leans, and then we've got the data to lean back on. And we can always say, are these lines overpriced or underpriced according to the data that we have available? So when they opened them up this afternoon, I was just smashing spot after spot after spot after spot because there were just things that were sticking out. So I can't wait to break it down with everybody here in the chat. And let's find ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks on this card because there's already some spots sticking out.
Yep, I'm right there with you, dude. Like, I hate when Bet Online opens up the props at like 8 a.m. And last night I went to bed at like 12. I woke up at like 3 in the morning and just stayed up like until 10, waiting for the props. And they didn't even get them out. Like, what's going on? And then I took a little nap, got back up, and they still weren't out. And then they luckily got them out around 3 o'clock Eastern time around there. And yeah, lots of spots stuck out. So let's get into it. Before we do so, if you guys can please leave a like, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. Me and WEEZY do go live every Monday for some probability here, always talking some props. And we do want to shout out the chat as well. We got Mushroom, first one in the chat. What is up, Mushroom? We got Annie Action Effie in the chat. We got Propaholic. We got Jenna Marie. We got Rob Lawrence in the chat. Kalu. We got Glenbon in the chat hanging out with us. What is up? We got Aussie UFC picks. We got Silky B. We got Daz Files. Always good to see Daz in the chat. We got Jack in the chat as well. Beat Ball. And I think we got everybody. Glenn, I see you as well. All right, WEEZY. Let us get into it. And let us start with the first fight on this 15-fight card. All right. So we have a very good fight. I'm actually really looking forward to this fight quite a bit. We got Juliana Miller going against Veronica Macedo Hardy. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 plus 110. The under 2.5 minus 140. The fight goes to decision plus 100. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 130. Right off the bat, WEEZY, it makes no sense what they're doing here. I mean, the fight doesn't go to decision should be wider than this under 2.5. So right there, you know, that sticks out. But yeah, I was hoping for a plus money under. And I didn't get it because they opened up the under 2.5 at minus 120. But for some reason, they opened up the fight doesn't go at plus 100. So I hopped on there for a unit, and I think it's still very much playable here at minus 130. I think this line's going to continue to move, and quite frankly, it just doesn't make sense where it's at right now. WEEZY, what are your thoughts on the first fight of the card?
Did you say minus 130 right now for that one? For the fight doesn't go?
Yeah, it went from plus 100 to minus 110 to minus 115 to minus 120 to currently sitting at minus 130.
All right, so it's going to be minus 130 for the fight doesn't go, and then plus 100, I take it, for the fight goes then, huh?
Yep.
All right, cool. So, yeah, you're right about that. It's kind of crazy that we're getting the fight doesn't go at a lower implied probability than what we get the under 2.5 because we know that the fight doesn't go more times, 40% than the under 2.5 happens at 36.26% for women's flyweight fights that last 3 rounds. So when we're looking at Juliana Miller and Veronica Hardy at the UFC level, we see that Juliana's fights have finished inside the distance, her only fight. For Veronica, it's 3 out of 5. You add that up, it's 4 out of 6. 66.67% of their combined UFC fights are finishing inside the distance, and we're only paying 56% on the line, so that is a 10% savings. Also, women's flyweight fights only finish inside the distance 40% of the time. In a fairly limited sample size here, we've got them finishing 66.67. That's 26.32% better than what the division finishes fights at. So even though when we compare that 56% implied probability of the betting line to the benchmark for the division, which is 40.35%, we are overpaying by 16% there. But when you add up the savings on these two metric comparisons, we're looking at a 20% savings overall. You and I both bet the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 100, though, where we got a much better implied probability. And we got 6% more savings in terms of the implied probability of the line here. So, it really breaks down to an extra 18% of savings when you make all those benchmark comparisons now. But stylistically, Brady, you got to love this fight finishing inside the distance, especially the way that Juliana Miller fights. I mean, she fights like she's on bath salts out there. Really, I mean, like she's pressuring constantly. She's got a great chin, so she's willing to stay in her opponent's face. She loves to clinch up. She's mean in there. She gets takedowns from the clinch, and then when she gets on top, she's extremely aggressive with both the ground and pound and the submission attempts. And we haven't seen Veronica Hardy in 3 years. So if she hasn't been in the cage for 3 years, the last kind of opponent that you want to go in there against is somebody that isn't going to let you find your way into the fight, because Juliana is going to come out of there like she's shot out of a cannon, like she has in every one of her previous fights. So I think that this thing does finish inside the distance. I think stylistically and data-wise, the fight doesn't go to decisions. A great bet for this week.
I love it. I really do love it. I went back and watched Veronica Hardy's some of her fights, man, and she had that weird 1 minute arm bar against Polyana Viana, which that makes no sense whatsoever. But yeah, outside of that, she's horrible. Got dominated by Jillian Robertson, subbed. She got dominated by Andrea Lee, almost got finished in that fight multiple times. And then Ashley Evans Smith finished her as well. So yeah, I like the fight doesn't go. I think Miller is going to really put it on her and eventually get her out of there. So yeah, stylistically, I love violence here in this one for sure.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And that line is absolutely still bettable at minus 130 right here. I think we do see violence in this spot. The curtain jerker almost always, gives you a little bit of value on that fight doesn't go to decision. But we are going to be in the larger cage this week, so that's something we got to keep in mind.
Glenn's saying they're both brown belts and BJJ, so it could be a striking match. I sure hope not. If it is, Miller is not going to look minus 450.
No, definitely not. Her striking's not good, and Verona Maceto's got that traditional martial arts style, so she's probably going to look better on the feet here. But still, I hope that doesn't wind up being a striking match, because if it is, we can just trash our fight doesn't go to decision cards right now, man, because I don't think either one of these ladies is finishing anybody on the feet.
No. Propaholic saying inside the distance, I'll take. Yeah. So Miller inside the distance actually opened up like plus 150, but it's currently plus 110, so it's getting smashed as we speak.
Oh, and by the way, Brady, shout out to our guy Glinbot in the chat. Do you know that he was on Connor Burks's and Ariel Helwani's The MMA Hour for being a big winner this week, along with our guy Narco Cop that guest on Your Best Bet show. Both of those guys were featured. So big ups, Narco Cop. Big ups, Glinbot. That's a huge accomplishment to get to have your tickets shown on that show.
Goodness, yeah, I got to go check that out. I saw Narco was on there, but didn't see Glinbot was on there. So yeah, I'll check that out after the show.
Absolutely.
All right, so we can keep moving on. WEEZY, we have another fight that probably is violence. We got a lightweight fight here between Jai Herbert and Ludovic Klein. So we have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is plus 135. The under 2.5 is minus 165. The fight goes to decision plus 155. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 190. WEEZY, what is sticking out on this fight here?
Well, it looks like a pretty well-priced line here. When you look at the changing of the colors here, right? The red tells us that we're overpaying. The green tells us that we're underpaying. And when we're kind of like yellowish, it means we're kind of in the middle here. Here we've got red, green, and like orange. Here we've got red, green, and yellow. So it means that, you're going to overpay based on the benchmark, but you're actually underpaying in terms of how these guys are finishing fights and going under 2.5 compared to how the division does as a whole. And it's priced pretty fairly here when you look at the 60% the amount of these guys combined 10 UFC fights that have went under 2.5 rounds and finished inside the distance compared to the 65 and 62% implied probabilities of the line. It all looks fairly priced. That being said, man, there's no way I'm betting overs in a Herbert Klein fight. These guys get finished a lot. And when we go over here to the advanced stats, Brady, we can see here Herbert and Klein. Herbert's 2-3 in the UFC, and he's been finished in all 3 of his UFC losses, and he's been finished in all 4 of his pro losses. And then for Ludovic Klein, he's got 4 pro losses. He's been finished in 3 of them. So 8 combined pro losses, 7 of them being inside the distance. Neither one of these guys has shown much durability. And because of that, you got to feel a lot more comfortable betting these violence lines and betting these fight doesn't go to decision because, frankly, Jay Herbert's got a ton of power on the feet. You know, he uses his length well, good power striking right down the middle, good kicks. And when he gets in the clinch, he throws those knees and they're nasty. We've seen him get knockouts with those knees. We've also seen him get knockdowns and knockouts with that straight 1-2 down the pipe. And then you got Ludovic Klein with those head kicks from the southpaw position. He's very dangerous on the feet. But Ludovic has just as many submissions as he does knockouts. So we've got a guy that's an equal opportunity finisher and it's going to be dangerous wherever the fight goes in Ludovic Klein. And then we've got Jay Herbert, who's going to be fighting in front of his home crowd and is very good on the feet and very dangerous there. So I'm thinking fight doesn't go to decision at -190. Could be a potential parlay piece this week just because stylistically, I think it makes a lot more sense than what the data is telling us that it makes sense.
So I was doing some math there. Yeah. So on DraftKings, actually, they have the under 2.5 at -150. I'm very interested in that.
-150, huh? Yeah. So let's put that into the template here. That's a 60% implied probability, and exactly 60% of their fights have went under 2.5 rounds. But the important thing, Brady, is that 4 of 5 of Herbert's fights have went under 2.5 rounds, while Klein has had some different types of stylistic matchups. I think the stylistic matchup on this one, it's lovely that we're not overpaying anywhere based on these metrics in a 10-fight sample size. I think that -150 is a good look.
Yeah, I like it. Herbert has been under 2.5 rounds, 13 of his 17 fights, and then Klein's been under 2.5 rounds, 18 of his 23. That comes out to 31 of their 40 fights have went under 2.5 rounds.
Yeah, man, that's a crazy amount there, and you've got to love that. Yeah, and right down here, everybody, just so you know, these are the under totals here that you see down here on the very bottom of the page. That's the outside the UFC stuff, and we're seeing that here. 8 of 9 fights for Jai Herbert outside of the UFC, finishing under 2.5 rounds that were scheduled for 3-round fights. And for Ludovic Klein, it's 15 of 16. So you add that up, 92% of their 25 combined fights have finished under 2.5 rounds outside the UFC. And then you add in the 6 out of 10, and that makes it 29 out of 35. That's a great number there. That's over 80%, and you're only paying 60% on the line. So, yeah, definitely under 2.5 for this fight. Definitely fight doesn't go to decision for the first fight are great looks, and you're not going to believe this, Brady. I once again forgot my trademark paper and pen to write down these lines. Can you believe it? So I'm going to pop out of the room. You give us the introduction on this next fight. I'm going to go get my old school pen and paper so I can continue to write down these leans that we're having today.
Sounds good. All right. Let us move on to the next fight then. I mean, we can probably skip this one, but we'll talk about it. We got Joanne Wood going against Luana Carolina. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. This is the most juiced over on the entire card. Over 2.5 -350, under 2.5 +275. The fight goes to decision -325. If the fight doesn't go to decision, is +250. I'm not touching this fight with the 10-foot pole, but if I was forced to, it had to be on the plus money just because laying chalk on this fight, just even thinking about it makes me sick. Yeah, pass for me, WEEZY, but these violence numbers are kind of sticking out from like a numbers perspective, huh?
They are, dude. I was telling you earlier, I'm like, there's a trifecta bet. Now, we've talked about these trifecta bets because they really kind of shouldn't exist. It's telling you, it's really trying to tell you, like, this line is underpriced. And when we see green here, here, and here, it means it's a trifecta bet. When we see red, it means it's a reverse trifecta bet, and it means that it's completely overpriced. So let's explain it. Plus 250, fight doesn't go to decision. That breaks down to a 28.57% implied probability that this fight finishes inside the distance according to the betting line. But 40% of women's flyweight fights finish inside the distance. So that's an 11.78% difference when we take that number and we subtract that number. So that's a savings there. In addition to that, now we've got a 22 fight sample size between Joanne Calderwood and Luana Carolina here at the UFC level, fights that have been scheduled for 3 rounds. 50% of those fights are finishing inside the distance. That's 11 out of 22. When you compare that 50% combined performance here to the 28.57% implied probability of the line, we've got a 21.43% price savings. And when we compare their 50% fight doesn't go to decision mark and compare it to the 40.35% benchmark for the division, we get a 9.65% savings. That's over 40, that's like about 42% of savings when we add up those 3 metrics and come up with that number. And that's with a plus 250 number. So, dude, I'm betting this.
Oh God.
I know, and I told you, I'm like, I might have to beat myself with a bag of oranges until I juice them and then drink the juice myself, even though I'm internally bleeding, just to make a point to myself that you shouldn't be betting on these 1-800-GAMBLER fights. But my God, they're begging me to do it, Brady. They're begging me.
It's sickening, man. It's sickening. How much you think? How much you think about going on like a half a unit on it?
Just a half unit. I'm just a half unit.
I don't hate it, dude.
I'm thinking about doing it, and I'm not in a hurry because my thought is, even though we've got a good audience here that does pay attention to the data, stylistically, it's kind of hard to picture this fight finishing inside the distance. And we might get something like, on FanDuel, where they tend to juice whichever way the public is going. We might get plus 300 for fight doesn't go on FanDuel.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yep. It's something I get for sure. Just if I had any money on this fight, I probably want to be able to sleep all week, and I do need some sleep. Like every time I bet on fights like that, I can't sleep all week. So for my mental health, I'm staying away, but I get the shot. I get it.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy, but I'm thinking about it, but I'm not. I want to sleep on it. I think I'm going to just sleep on this and consider it because, I might not be able to forgive myself if it just coasts to a decision with very little violence happening. But the analytics love it, everybody. That's what we're here to analyze. We're here to analyze these analytics using this prop template, and the analytics are begging us to bet the violence here.
I like it. All right. We'll move on to another violent fight that the bookies are really all over on this one. We have Malcolm Gordon going against Jake Hadley. It's a flyweight fight, and they put the over-under at 1.5 rounds. So the over 1.5 is minus 155. The under 1.5 is plus 125. The under 1.5 opened up at plus 120, went all the way down to minus 105. It's back to plus 125. The fight goes to decision, plus 240. The fight doesn't go to decision, is minus 300. I'm very disappointed because, it's not a hot take or nothing like that, but Malcolm Gordon's been finished in all of his losses. He's probably pound for pound the most least durable fighter on the UFC roster. Now, I think Jason Witt's cut. He's been finished in, he has been finished in all 6 losses, Malcolm Gordon. And then as far as Hadley has never been finished, but yeah, Gordon finished in all 6 of his losses. So I was kind of thinking fight doesn't go, maybe like an under 2.5. I was thinking maybe even like Hadley inside the distance, but Hadley inside the distance, WEEZY, guess what it is right now?
All right, so fight doesn't go to decision is minus 300. They got Hadley with about 75% of the win equity. I would have to say minus 115.
I wish. Minus 270.
Oh my God, puke. You got to be kidding me. Minus 270 and the fight doesn't go is minus 300?
Yes.
Whoo! That is an overpayment there. And we're looking at overpayments here, Brady.
Yes.
We're looking at big time overpayments. Minus 300 for fight doesn't go to decision. That's a 75% implied probability. Now, If we look outside the UFC, though, right, Brady? All 6 of Hadley's fights have finished inside the distance. All 5 out of 7 for Gordon. So 84% of their combined fights outside of the UFC have finished inside the distance. 71% of their fights at the UFC level. And that's a 7-fight sample size, a decent sample size, but definitely not something we can really hang our hat on data-wise. But still, 71.5%. We're overpaying there by about 3.57% when we compare that 71% metric to the 75% implied probability of the line. So, yeah, I mean, and it's a 31.5% overpayment because only 43% of flyweight fights finish inside the distance. So I just can't see doing this. I can't see it. Betting that violence line at minus 300. And when we look at the over and under 1.5 lines, they're priced pretty fairly. If you look at this line right here, the combined performances of the fighters at the UFC level compared to the implied probability of the line, here we see a 1.59% overpayment, and here we see a 3.64% overpayment, which gives us about a 5% VIG, which is right about where it should be. So it looks like everything here is priced to make me, a better like me, kind of stay away from this one. I mean, is there anything that you're leaning for this fight?
No, not right now. I was hoping maybe money comes in on like these overs and the fight goes, but I mean, it's a Malcolm Gordon fight. I think everybody knows by now. I mean, this guy, like I said, least durable fighter, pound for pound, finishing all 6 of his losses. So I don't think it changes much, and I can't lay this price tag on violence, although I really do like it. But minus 270 for Hadley inside the distance, get some help.
Yeah, and I mean, even Hadley's never went under 1.5 at the UFC level. Gordon has 3 out of 5 times, but now you're counting on Hadley to do that against Gordon, and he hasn't shown to be a finisher at this level yet, especially under 1.5 rounds at least. So,
Yeah.
very interesting line here. It's priced to make me stay away, but I mean, the one thing that I wouldn't do, Brady, is bet an over in a Malcolm Gordon fight unless the bookies were just really making it very, very, very attractive, and it's not even close to attractive enough.
Dude, I wouldn't even bet an over if Malcolm Gordon was fighting like a hot shower or a seatbelt. Seatbelt.
Yeah, you could use the seatbelt one because I passed on using that in the Joanne
Yeah,
Wood
you did.
fight.
You did.
We'll see if I bring it up on Just the Tip on Tuesday night, but
You gotta. You gotta do it.
yeah, man, this one feels like a stay away from me, dude.
Agreed. All right. More violence, more juiced violence. We have Dusko Todorovic going against Christian Leroy Duncan. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds, the over 1.5 minus 105, the under 1.5 minus 125. The fight goes to decision plus 275. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 350. What are you going to do? I agree. I think it's a violent fight. I think Duncan, knocks out Dusko Todorovic, but laying chalk on an under here in this match. I don't know if I can do it. So it's going to be another pass for me, WEEZY, but what's sticking out to you here?
Yeah, not much sticking out here because I love violence in this spot. I watched all the tape on Christian Leroy Duncan. The guy's a great striker. And when you take him down to try to get him to where he's a little bit weaker than where he is on the feet, he's got good takedown defense, serviceable takedown defense. And when he does get taken down, he tends to get back up and he can get sweeps. He can go for submissions, but everything that he kind of does on the ground is designed to get back up to the feet where he does his best work. And, I think everybody knows that Dusko's striking defense is a little terrifying to watch, man. He's got that shaved head. It looks kind of creepy and bulbous, and he's always keeping his hands down and moving that head. And it's really disturbing to watch. And it's hard to watch, especially if you're looking for fights to go over, because this dude just gets hit a lot. He does move his head a ton, but having his hands down like that is very irresponsible at this level. So, and I love what Christian Leroy Duncan brings on the feet, but at minus 125 for the under 1.5, you're overpaying by 18.33% when you compare it to the benchmark. And we haven't seen Christian Leroy Duncan at this level yet. However, I will say that his Cage Warriors competition was very good for the regional scene. This dude fought legit regional scene competition. I feel like he's ready to step into the UFC. And even if you don't like his regional scene competition, go to the amateur record for this kid. 17-6 as an amateur, 23 professional fights. The one thing about Duncan, he's never been finished, right? So I'm thinking maybe the best way to play this, if you're playing on that violence side, what is Christian Leroy Duncan inside the distance right now, Brady? Because if Christian Leroy Duncan's never been finished, Dusko Todorovic does his best work on the ground. And this guy's been on the ground already with Will Curry in 2 fights, with Jati Milan. He's been on the ground with some good grapplers. So maybe we can get a much cheaper price by going Christian Leroy Duncan inside the distance rather than betting that minus 350 fight doesn't go to decision.
Yeah, so Duncan on the money line is minus 180, and then the inside the distance is minus 110.
Jeez, man, that's juiced. No thanks, man. No thanks. But I think that's still the way I would play it if I had a violence mind for this fight, because Christian Leroy Duncan's got about a 30 fight career when you include the amateurs, and he's never been finished. So it could be an interesting way to play that one. But I'm not seeing enough underpricings here on these non-violence betting lines in order for me to take a chance on those. And frankly, the overpricing of these make them almost unbettable to me because Duncan's making his debut and we don't really know what to expect from him. But I'm surprised that Duncan inside the distance isn't plus money. So I think I'm just going to stay away from this one.
Yeah, looks like BetOnline just completely overpriced a lot of these violence props today, and you took advantage. We'll talk about some of these on the non-violent side of things. This is one where they're just completely overpricing the violence. Like Duncan by KO only plus 130, inside the distance only minus 110, and that fight doesn't go minus 350. So yeah, nothing really sticking out. But yeah, I do lean towards Duncan getting that KO at some point. All right. Next, we'll move on to this is probably my favorite fight on the prelims. So we have Lerone Murphy going against Gabriel Santos. We have the over/under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 160. The under 2.5 plus 130. The fight goes to decision minus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 105. Yeah, I think this fight's gonna be awesome. I'm a big fan of Gabriel Santos. I think this guy could potentially be the real deal. It's just a very tough matchup for him, I think, here on short notice, going to London from Brazil. It's going to be a big, a long plane flight there. I think it's like a week short notice as well. And I don't know, Santos kind of reminds me of like a Charles Oliveira. He's extremely reckless. He's very dangerous everywhere. Incredible ground game, but doesn't have the wrestling to get it there. And then on the feet, he's sloppy, he's hittable, but he has a ton of power. Lerone Murphy obviously has a ton of power in his own right. I like violence here. I like the under 2.5 at plus 130. I like the fight doesn't go. I got it at plus 105. It's now minus 105. I think someone's getting served here. I think both these guys are super, super dangerous. I do lean towards Murphy getting that knockout, though. But if Santos is able to get this fight down to the mat, he's a BJJ brown belt and, like I said, a very dangerous grappler. So, yeah, I like violence here on this one, WEEZY. And I was kind of surprised I was able to get that plus money fight doesn't go here with these two. I mean, this is going to be an all-out war.
Yeah, it is. The problem we have here, and let's quickly take a look at the advanced stats for this fight. Glenbot just brought it up in the chat, because our guy Lou Betya always talks about how if neither fighter has ever been finished, it's dangerous to bet violence lines, right? And we see here that Lerone Murphy has no pro losses, so he's never been finished. And Gabriel Santos has got no pro losses, so he's never been finished. So we got to find out how durable both of these guys are. Now, we do know that Lerone Murphy is durable because he's been shot 3 times in the head and he survived. Some of that shrapnel still in his tongue to this day, okay? But we don't really know what Moscatino Santos is going to bring to the table on short notice. Like you mentioned, a flight from Brazil to London, that's got to be a nightmare of a flight. Got to be about 18 hours at least, I would think. And then you're making the fight on short notice. You're making the weight cut on short notice down to 145 pounds. We'll see where Santos was with his training because chances are he's probably not making weight. And those catch weight fights always tend to finish inside the distance at a little bit higher rate than the ones where everyone made weight. So very interesting here. We look at Santos, 8 fights outside of the UFC. 4 of them didn't even start round 2. 5 of them didn't start round 3. 6 of them went under 2.5, and 6 of them didn't go to decision. So, we can see here that for fight doesn't go to decision at minus 105, Brady, it's only overpriced by 7.84%. So that's not a terrible overpricing, as we were just seeing 15 to 20 to 35% overpricings on violence lines on some of these prior fights. So this one, in comparison, is not really overpriced. And then we could see that Laron Murphy's fights have finished inside the distance 50% of the time at the UFC level. We're only paying 51.22% here. So it's not overpriced according to the available data. And then when we talk about the stylistic read, Brady, you got a guy in Laron Murphy who's got a ton of power on the feet. And the same thing with Moscatino Santos. Santos is a very good grappler too, and Laron Murphy doesn't have very good takedown defense. So I could see this fight, I could see somebody being dangerous in this fight no matter where it goes. And then you add quick weight cut here on short notice for Santos, potential adrenaline dump, long flight. Yeah, man, fight doesn't go to decision is the way I would play this, but I would be careful just because neither guy has ever been finished before. And maybe I might even go with a little bit better pricing here on the plus 130 for the under 2.5, Brady, because that's a little less overpriced compared to the metric and much less, much better priced, because both of their fights that finished inside the distance went under 2.5 as well. So that metric looks a little bit better against the lower implied probability of this line. So under 2.5 at plus 130 is the way I would play this.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, neither guy's been finished, but man, Santos has been dropped a lot, and props to him. He's been able to come back and stuff, but Murphy hits a lot harder than these other guys have been facing. So another prop that really stuck out to me on Bet Online was the Murphy KO prop at plus 400. With Santos being so hittable, with his chin being a little bit questionable, like I saw him get dropped like 3 times in one fight. I think Murphy by KO at plus 400. Is a pretty good look this week. I like that a lot better than that money line at around minus 160.
Yeah, man, and you got me on that one as well too. You told me you like that prop. I looked at it and I like it as well. So I'm on it for a quarter unit as well here. So definitely you've got a lot of action going already on this card.
5 units to win 20 units on that KO prop.
What's that? There we go, man. Swing for the fences. Let's go.
No, I have a quarter unit to win a unit. I like that. Small bet to win a whole unit. I like it. All right. Let's keep moving on to this next fight. A very interesting fight. We have Muhammad Mokaev going against Jafel Filho. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds now. It was 1.5. They pulled the 1.5, and it's now at 2.5. The over 2.5 plus 120. The under 2.5 minus 150. The fight goes to decision plus 160. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 200. And for this one, we have seen Filho finished by submission. It came back in, I think, 2017. So it was a while ago. I'm not sure what belt rank he is or nothing like that, but looks like a pretty good grappler from the tape I watched. Muhammad Mokaev, 66% finish rate. Filho, 93%. Filho's been to decision only twice out of, I don't know how much fights he's been to, but he's been to decision only twice there. I guess I would... I don't know. I mean, I guess I would lean decision, but I don't know. WEEZY, anything sticking out here?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because we got these violence lines are horribly overpriced this week. Look at this.
Yeah.
For a flyweight fight, we got a 20% overpricing here according to the benchmark, 23% overpricing here, and it's priced fairly, according to, because 2 of 3 of Mokaev's fights have not went to decision. And he's a huge favorite here, like minus 800. So they're telling you he wins this fight about 89% of the time. And because of that, you're going to be paying up for fight doesn't go to decision, because they're just assuming because somebody's that big of a favorite that they're going to finish the fight. But Filho, this guy's finished 13 of his 15 pro fights have finished inside the distance. He's been finished once, and he's finishing a lot of his opponents. Mokaev, 5 of 7 outside the UFC, 81%. of their non-UFC 3-round fights have finished inside the distance, and 66.67% have finished. But man, I mean, these are big overpayments here, in my opinion, for any flyweight fight to finish inside the distance. And Filio's a good grappler, but consequently, the over 2.5, we can't get too excited about it, Brady, but there is a trifecta bet here because the over 2.5 at plus 120 is a 45% implied probability. 60% of flyweight fights go over 2.5, so that's a break of 15%. We got 2/3 of their combined fights at the UFC level have went over 2.5 rounds, so that's a 21% break, and they're going over 2.5 rounds at a 6.1% rate, better than what the division does. Trifecta here that adds up to almost 40% in savings. So if you're a contrarian, if you think that Filio's got a good ground game, that's the line that's underpriced here, because Mikhaev has finished one fight in the last 2.5 minutes of round 3. So you would definitely rather have an over 2.5 rather than the fight goes to decision here. So at plus 120, the over 2.5 is a trifecta bet. I'm writing it down. If I feel a little bit frisky, Brady, I might be betting that.
Yep. As of now, that's where I would look as well. I might wait. I think money's going to keep coming in on these overs. Like they had it at 1.5 and money poured in on that 1.5, and now money's pouring on this 2.5. So I think a lot of people are thinking this fight goes over as well.
And I could see it doing that because it's not like this guy Filio is going to be a fish out of water on the ground. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu game is excellent.
Yeah, he's really good. I think he's good. I'm actually kind of shocked at the money line. And apparently, like Mikhaev has like a shoulder injury, like people are talking about. Like Effie in the chat says he only has one arm, so minus 1,000 favorite with one arm. What could go wrong?
Yeah, right.
Oh
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to take a long look at that because if I can get Filio at plus 700 or something, quarter unit, to win 1.75. I mean, it's a fight, you guys. Anything can happen.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, as of now, I think I'm going to stay away from this one, but we'll see what happens throughout the week with this line movement. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We have Sam Patterson going against Yanal Ashmos. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds, the over 1.5 minus 185, the under 1.5 plus 155. The fight goes to decision plus 180. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 220. Looks like the fight doesn't go, open at minus 250. A little bit of money coming in on that fight goes. WEEZY, what is sticking out to this one here?
Well, we don't have any UFC data. We got two guys here that are making their debut. I'm not exactly even sure why Yanal Ashmos is in the UFC at this point, just because he hasn't done much on the regional scene. And he never fought on the Contender Series. His best win is a win in CFFC. This is one where the data doesn't help us out that much. We do know that Sam Patterson, 10 of his 12 fights that have been scheduled for 3 rounds have finished inside the distance as a pro. And for Yanal Ashmos, it's 5 of 6. So we got an 83.33% combined finish rate there. We're paying 68.75% on the line. Under 1.5 rounds, only 44% of their combined pro fights have went under 1.5 rounds. We're paying 39%, so it's a little bit of an overpayment, but there's really nothing that the data is telling us to do here, Brady, at all. Patterson, the way that he fights, I think that fight doesn't go to decision is a lot safer because the guy's main weapons are cardio, pace, and pressure. So those kind of weapons take longer to break somebody than the one punch, knockout power, which Sam has shown a little bit of that. But, I just don't know too much about this Ashmos character. So I kind of feel like these lines, the data isn't much help, and you're going to have to rely entirely on your stylistic read for this fight. And if your stylistic read is telling you that it's going to be a violent fight, I still feel like these lines, minus 220, that's overpriced by 18.3%. It's a big risk to take for two guys that are, making their debut.
Yep, I agree. Probably one I'll stay away from as of now as well. But yeah, I definitely do lean violence and definitely lean towards Patterson getting that finish. All right, next we have an interesting one. We have, Omar Morales going against Chris Duncan. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 plus 160. Under 2.5 minus 200. Fight goes to decision plus 150. Fight doesn't go to decision minus 180. This is one where I lean violence, but the numbers don't line up with it at all. And then on top of that, I just don't really trust Omar Morales. I mean, he goes in there and he just doesn't do anything. He's shown really no power in the UFC. Yes, he knocked down Dong Hung Ma or whatever his name was, who everybody knocks out, and he wasn't able to knock him out. He knocked him down. Typically Morales is tough, but he's been finishing his last 2 fights. But Chris Duncan, he has a lot of power. He has no striking defense. Like Chris Duncan has the worst striking defense on the card, which is saying a lot considering Dusko Todoro, which is on the card. I mean, no striking defense whatsoever. Walks with his hands completely down. So yeah, I definitely lean violence here, but I could also see this fight going to decision. And minus 180, I think I'll kind of stay away here. So I have a weird feeling about this one, WEEZY, and like you see on the screen, the numbers don't really like it as well.
Yeah, but the thing is that we got Duncan kind of making a debut here. So outside the UFC, and this includes Dana White Contender Series, Chris Duncan's fights that have been scheduled for 3 rounds are finishing inside the distance 9 of 10 times. For Morales outside the UFC, it's 7 of 8. So an alarming 89% of their combined outside the UFC fights are finishing inside the distance. But Morales, it's 2 out of 6 here as a pro or as a UFC fighter. So, and we don't have any data really yet on Duncan. So only 33%. I mean, this is a big time negative trifecta bet here. And you're paying juice.
Yeah.
And we see here big trifecta bets on the other side, but we have to keep in mind that it's a small sample size. It's a 6-fight sample size, and it's all on the Omar Morales side. So Chris Duncan could come in here, be a wild card, fight like an absolute wild man, and make that minus 180 fight doesn't go to decision look like it should have been priced up at minus 500. But we're kind of missing some information, aren't we, Brady? Where's Omar Morales at this point? This guy came into the UFC at 155 pounds. Then he started cutting down to 145. That didn't really work for him. Now he's back up to 155, not getting any younger, not really showing much power, definitely pretty low volume too. But then you got a guy in Duncan who's got piss poor striking defense. He fights like a madman. He's got bad defense and good offense. He's a good hammer and a pretty good nail too. He's come back from bad beatings and won fights. So, stylistically, it's telling me bet the under. But the price, it means that, it's telling us, look, if you're betting this under, sure, anything can happen here, but you're making a ton of assumptions and you're overpaying. So I don't think I'm getting to an overbet here, Brady, but these are trifecta overbets. But like I say, it's only one fighter. It's a 6-fight sample size, and we really don't know what Chris Duncan's going to bring to the table here in his debut. So I feel like it's a stay away from me.
Yeah, I just can't trust Morales to finish Duncan here. I mean, Duncan, he's hittable, but he's tough. I mean, he can get knocked down and come back. And Morales, he doesn't throw anything. He hasn't shown power at this level. So I think if there's a finish, honestly, it might be on the Chris Duncan side. So I was looking at the Duncan maybe finish only, but they're all over that, minus 150 for that. So yeah, it's probably something I'll just stay away from. Maybe like a finish prop on Duncan, but even that, I mean, it's kind of a fight I just want to avoid probably.
Yeah, we got to find out a little bit more about Chris Duncan.
Yeah.
I think there's just more information that we kind of need in order to be responsible about whether we're going to bet this fight or not. And I want to be responsible here.
Yep, for sure. Propaholics talking about some Morales by sub. He is a black belt.
Yeah.
Plus 1,200 for that sub prop, but he hasn't really shown to use that much in the UFC.
Yeah, he's one of those black belts, kind of like Victor Rodriguez was a black belt a couple of weeks ago against Jordan Levitt, and wound up getting knocked out on the feet. It's just some guys have got black belts and they just don't show it, so it's weird.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next fight then, a fight that me and you both have a bet on. We have Jack Shore going against Makwan Amirkhani. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds, the over 1.5 minus 150, the under 1.5 plus 120. The fight goes to decision plus 220. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 280. So yeah, I think this fight does finish personally, but I'm kind of shocked they put this over-under at 1.5 rounds. Like, you got to think, if this fight finishes under, it's Makwan Amirkhani, and he's a plus 400 underdog. So I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't add up to me. Makwan, he's pretty tough. He got finished by JSP. Also got finished by someone else, but he went to decision a couple times against Kamala Kirk recently. He's only been finished, I think, twice. Let me see. Yeah, no, never mind. 4 times out of 8 losses. So he has been finished 4 of 8 losses, but still, I think he's a tough guy. I think he lasts here until maybe the 3rd round. So I kind of see a Jack Shore late finish in this one. But I'm on the over 1.5 at -125. I like the line here. I think if it does go under, it's because Makwan gets something early, and I don't see Makwan having much success against Jack Shore in this fight. So yeah, give me the over in this one. I know the prop template loves it as well, Weezy.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, like that fight goes to decision open at plus 300. And I just didn't pull the trigger, but I knew that that was way off. That was just stupid. But even at plus 220, underpriced by 25% according to the benchmark, underpriced by 10% according to the combined performance of these guys. That's 42.11% fight goes to decision rate for 3-round fights. And that's over a 19 fight sample size. So that's pretty good. We like that. The over 1.5 was the bet to make, though. At -150 right now, at a 60% implied probability, we see that 73% of featherweight fights go over 1.5 rounds. So that's a 13% savings. And then you see a guy right here in Jack Shore, 5 of his 6 fights going over 1.5 rounds. Makwan Amirkhani, 8 of 13. That's a combined 13 of 19 UFC fights. Great sample size. Both guys well over 50% here. And especially Jack Shore, 5 of 6. I love that because Jack Shore isn't a huge submission threat, and he's not going to out-wrestle Makwan Amirkhani early in this fight. Neither one of these guys really has any power on the feet, so I don't see any knockouts happening. So I love the underpricing here. I love the underpricing here. And we're only overpaying by about 4.5% when we compare the 68% combined over 1.5 rate of Shore and Amirkhani combined at the UFC level to the 72% over 1.5 rate of the division. So it's not quite a trifecta bet, but it's a bet with about 15% in savings, and a bet, in my opinion, where the stylistic read leads me to believe that this thing goes over 1.5. Because you look at the only fight that went under 1.5 for Jack Shore, I believe, was the Nohelin Hernandez fight. And I mean, like, no, he's finished 2 guys, Jack Shore has. Nohelin Hernandez and Aaron Phillips, both of them pure strikers with no grappling games whatsoever. Amirkhani's the opposite. He's like an okay striker who's a fantastic wrestler and has a great front choke series going for Bravo and Anaconda chokes. So I think that this fight goes over. I bet 2.6 units at -130 earlier today on the over 1.5 on Bet Online Sportsbook. Shout out Bet Online Sportsbook, Brady. Those are the guys that have the most accessible offline or offshore sportsbook. They get out the lines earliest, and they're first to market besides 5 Dimes, but 5 Dimes is inaccessible to almost the entire world. So we love Bet Online here.
Yep, for sure. I'm on the under with you, and I'm also planning on sprinkling.
Over. You're on the over.
Oh, yeah. I'm so used to betting unders, Weezy. You got to bear with me. Like, I never bet overs. But, by the way, thanks to Probability, Weezy, guess what? I cashed 2 parlays due to JJ Aldrich over.
There we go, baby. That's what it's all about. We cashed that Probability parlay last week, over 1.5 rounds. Aldrich Lipsky, over 1.5 rounds. Williams Bresky. Cash it, baby.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I parlayed the Aldrich over with the Batista and Span unders. Beautiful, beautiful. Both plus money those were, so I like that. And yep, going with the over here, over. And then I'm also planning on sprinkling like the Shore round props, but I'm not doing it on Bet Online. Like Shore round 2 on Bet Online is plus 300, and Shore round 3 is plus 450.
Dude, like if you add up those round props, it probably looks like Jack Shore has 114% probability of winning, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy. They're so overpriced, but sometimes, that's fine. Let them overprice those props because the other books that come to market later, they'll give you some fatter numbers on these. But what we love Bet Online for is the fact that they're opening those over-unders, and those fight doesn't go to decisions first. It allows us to be first to market, and it allows the people who join my Patreon and who make themselves who get themselves access to this prop template. It really gives them a huge advantage.
Yep, shout out to Bet Online. I don't always like where they put some of these lines, but I do like the fact that they are first, and that's awesome. All right, we'll move on to the next fight, and we have a really good fight here. We have Roma Dolidze going against Marvin Vettori. We have the over/under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5 minus 210, the under 2.5 plus 170. The fight goes to decision minus 180. The fight doesn't go to decision plus 150. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I had to put it up, dude. You
I just
can't
saw
talk
that.
about a Makwan Amirkhani fight without putting up the most legendary Tapology picture that's ever been taken. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Finland, Makwan Amirkhani.
Well, I think I had to put it number 2.
Oh, which one you got number 1, dude? Is it Na Liang?
No, Shamil Abdurakhimov in that very handsome suit, dude. I mean, it does not get much better than that suit.
The crested blazer, the belt over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very, very good picture. But yeah, I had to shout out Makwan Amirkhani for one of my favorite Tapology pictures of all time there. But yeah, let's talk about Vettori Dolidze. What do you got going?
Both these guys are durable. Very, very durable. Marvin Vettori never been finished. I don't believe he's ever been finished. And then Roman Dolidze never been finished. Combined 7 losses. Neither guy's been finished. I feel like this is a great over spot, actually. So yeah, another over I might be considering. 2.5 minus 180. No, 2.5 minus 210 on DraftKings is like minus 2. It's definitely chalky, but it's just if this fight does finish, I don't know. I think it might be like a Dolidze finish. I just don't see Marvin Vettori getting a finish at all. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning overs here, but we definitely are paying the juice for it.
Yeah, man. You can really count on that Marvin Vettori durability. The guy is unbelievably tough, and I mean the shots that he can absorb and eat like flapjacks just blow me away every damn time. I mean, somebody's going to crack this guy's chin at some point, right? Before he retires. I mean, is this the time? Because you're getting some nice underpricings here. 14.5% here, 15 and 0.7% here, but you're overpaying, here you're overpaying here for these violence betting lines. And while we're overpaying here for 20 and 19%, the combined performance, we're really not getting a break there. But these guys go over 2.5 and they go to decision at a much higher rate than what the division does. And we know that both of these guys are tough. Roman Dolidze never been finished. Marvin Vettori never been finished. So potentially minus 170 for fight goes, or minus 210 for over 2.5. I mean, I think that they're bettable at this price, but you're laying juice and you're really not getting much of a break anywhere. Yeah, this is one that, I mean, like, I am just not compelled on the data to go running to the window. But what my stylistic read is that this fight goes over 12.5 minutes.
Yeah, unless somebody brings some brass knuckles in the cage, but they check them well before they get in there, I believe.
That's the whole point of that thing where you step into the cage before, they put the Vaseline on you. They check for brass knuckles. They make sure that there are no foreign objects lodged somewhere in your trunk, in your trunks. There's a lot of things that they do. And yeah, they don't let you put the barbed wire on the gloves anymore. So, the fight really, while it's kind of lost a lot of its flair because of that, Brady, it's also a lot safer for the fighters. And we like that.
Yep, I agree. So maybe I'm curious to see where they put like the over 1.5. I know it's gonna be chalky, but maybe a safe parlay piece. Shout out to Glenn, saying that 8 of their last 10 fights have went over 1.5 rounds. So that's 80% there. So if I can get it around minus 400 or so, maybe a good parlay piece. But yeah, I think this fight does go over.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I think you can really count on both of these guys' durability. It's just, I think that if you get the right price on the over 1.5, or the fight starts round 3, for instance, they both could be good parlay pieces if they're priced correctly.
Yep, agreed. So I'll be looking out for those. But yeah, should be a good fight to kick off that main card. All right, we're gonna move on. We have a couple more fights to go. We have Jennifer Maia going against Casey O'Neill. We have the over under is set at 2.5 rounds. I think this is probably the second or third most juiced over. So it is juiced to minus 300 now. The under 2.5 is plus 240. The fight goes to decision minus 260. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 200. Yet it's extremely juiced, and I think that's just due to how tough Jennifer Maia is. I see it going to decision, but minus 300, won't get there myself. Weezy, what's sticking out here?
Yeah, nothing's really sticking out here. We've got 12.5% overpayment here when you compare the implied probability to the benchmark for the division. 11.26% here. They're priced fairly according to what the combined performance of these two ladies is over the long term at the UFC level. But you look at Maia, 8 of her 9 fights have started round 2. 8 of her 9 fights have started round 3. 8 of her 9 fights have went over 1.5. 8 of her 9 fights have went over 2.5. 8 of her 9 fights have went to decision. So, like, if you're betting violence, you might as well bet that something happens early, because, like, the longer this fight goes, the longer Jennifer Maia gets comfortable. She's going to work her way into this fight and find a way to get to decision. That's what she always does. She's not getting submitted by Casey O'Neill. She probably isn't really even getting taken down by Casey O'Neill. She's just going to get out-volumed on the feet, and I think Casey O'Neill probably wins this fight by decision. But we can't really parlay them at these prices either, Brady, because there's really nothing special about the way that they're priced here. We're getting a little bit of a break here. 77% of their fights have went over 2.5 rounds. We're only paying 75% on the line. It's really hard for me to picture one of these ladies finishing this fight in under 2.5 rounds. Really hard for me to picture. But, minus 300 isn't something that gets me really excited either. So I think this is just another stay away.
Yeah, if it does finish, it's probably like a Maia, like armbar from guard type situation. Outside of that, I mean, O'Neill's not knocking her out. O'Neill's definitely not subbing her. Maybe O'Neill by decision, something I would maybe look at. But yeah, outside of that, I'm going to stay away from this one.
Yeah, agreed, man. There's nothing sticking out here.
All right, we'll move on to the next fight. Then we have another very juiced fight. Doesn't go. We have Brian Barberena going against Gunnar Nelson here. The over-under is set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 is currently sitting at, they take, I don't even see it.
Did they take it off? They might have gotten washed on it, dude.
It's not even showing up. But last time I saw it, like the over 1.5 was minus 160, I think it was.
I have minus 165 in the prop template. We'll go with that for now.
Okay, yeah, it's not even showing up right now. But I do remember that the fight doesn't go to decision was something crazy as well. Yeah, this is one where I think it finishes, but I mean they're just way overpricing these violence lines. And then I was also looking for Gunnar Nelson by sub. It was a prop that I had my eye out for, but they priced it, I think, like minus 115. So yeah, I won't have any action on this fight, but I know you have a pretty big bet on this one, I think.
Yeah, I do, man. I mean, like, they opened that over 1.5 at minus 120. So I hit it for 2.4 units to try to win 2. And, we see it at minus 165 here. It's still a trifecta bet. Both the over 2.5 at plus 105 and the over 1.5 at minus 165 are both trifecta bets here. We can see a 4.21% underpricing here when we compare the 66.47% over 1.5 rate of the division to the 62.26% implied probability of the line. 8 of 11 of Gunnar Nelson's UFC fights and 14 of 16 of Brian Barberena's UFC fights have went over 1.5 rounds. That's 81.5%. So you compare that number to the 62.26% implied probability of the line. That's a 19.22% savings. Compare that 81.48% to the over 1.5 of the line. You got a 15% savings. That's a big fat trifecta bet. with about 39% of savings between the three lines that between the three comparisons that we make. So those are the kind of bets that we just don't ignore. Brian Barberena is a tough dude. Yeah, Gunnar Nelson could sub him, but Gunnar Nelson is not the most active wrestler in the world. This is not a guy that's going out there and like attempting 10 takedowns per fight. He wrestles sparingly. And when he gets fights to the ground, he will hunt for submissions, but it's not like Brian hasn't been down there with some studs before. And like we say, 8 of 11 for Gunnar Nelson go over 1.5. 14 of 16 for Barberena go over 1.5. So even though Gunnar Nelson's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a very high-level ADCC grappler, I still think that because he's not the best wrestler in the world and not the most active wrestler in the world, we could probably count on this fight going over 1.5 rounds as we see those great data comparisons are showing us some huge savings there. Those violence lines are horrifically overpriced, with the worst one being the under 1.5 at plus 135. That's a 33% benchmark. You're paying 42, and only 18% of Nelson and Barberena's combined UFC fights have went under 1.5 rounds. That's only 18.52%. That's compared to a 33% benchmark and a 42% line. So yeah, over 1.5 is one of my favorite bets of the week.
All right. Yeah, I'm not getting into it myself, but I see why. I think Gunnar subs. I just don't know when. If he gets him down early, it's going to be a sweat. But yeah, Barberena, his sub defense is good. It's solid. But Gunnar Nelson's a very good grappler, so I get why. But the line's gone now, so it doesn't even matter. The over 1.5, I do see it's minus 165 on Bet Online, so that's the same. But on DraftKings, they actually took off the over 1.5, and it's now at 2.5. And the over 2.5 is plus 105, and the under 2.5 is minus 135.
Yep, I've got that in the template as well. I saw those on DraftKings earlier, so I added them to it. And yeah, the over 2.5 at plus 105 is also a trifecta bet, adding up to about 21% in savings, but that over 1.5 adds up to about 40% in savings. So the analytics like that over 1.5 a lot more than the over 2.5.
Sounds good. It makes sense to me. I will not be betting on this fight. I was looking for Nelson by sub, but I think it was like minus 115 to minus 120. So I'll be passing on this one, but I will wish you luck on your bet, WEEZY. It's a pretty good one.
Appreciate you.
All right, moving on to the next fight. We have the co-main event. We have Justin Gaethje going against Rafael Fiziev. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 is now minus 180. It was just minus 200, but money came back in on the under. So minus 180 to the over, and then under 1.5 is plus 150. The fight goes to decision, plus 180. The fight doesn't go to decision, is minus 220. WEEZY, what do you like on this one here?
I bet the over 1.5 at minus 150 when that opened. As we can see here, even at minus 180 for the over 1.5, we have another trifecta bet here. There are 3 trifecta bets as we currently speak here on the non-violent side for this fight. Here on the over 1.5, we've got a 64.3% implied probability. 67% of the fights are going over 1.5 rounds. That's a 3% savings. And when we add up Justin Gaethje's 3-round fights, which there are only 2 of them, and Fiziev's 6 3-round fights, we see that 6 of the 8 have went over 1.5 rounds. That's 75%. 10% break there, a 7.8% break when we compare that number to this number here. So definitely a trifecta bet. The over 2.5 at plus 100, the data likes even more. And the fight goes at plus 180 is even better according to the data. Because, the thing is, Fiziev hasn't been this monster finisher at the UFC level against, higher level competition, guys like Gaethje, So I'm looking for this fight to go over 1.5 rounds, but it's going to be an absolute sweat. So I bet 1.5 units to win 1 on that over 1.5 at minus 150, but I don't have the balls to go any heavier than that. This is going to be a violent fight. Gaethje's fights, are just like crazy. They're so much fun. He's so aggressive. And I kind of like the Justin Gaethje money line here because it's hard to fight technical against guys like Gaethje that just kind of pressure and throw tons of volume, throw tons of low leg kicks. And he can really trust his chin too. The dude is extremely durable, extremely tough, a ton of heart. So unless you're subbing Justin Gaethje, it's very difficult to get him out of there. And a guy like Fiziev, he's got really good striking defense. He's very difficult to find. He's very responsible on the feet, and he's got almost perfect takedown defense. So I kind of feel like this fight, it probably doesn't end by submission. If it does end, it's going to end by knockout, but that's probably going to be very similar to what we've already seen for the minus 220 fight doesn't go to decision. So I took a shot on the over here. It's not nearly as impressive now, analytics wise, as it was at minus 150 earlier. But still, the minus 180 is a trifecta bet, so I don't think we should ignore it.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the other way, not like the under 1.5, but I'm kind of leaning the fight doesn't go to decision, just not at this price. I'm hoping it comes down a little bit more, but these guys have been finished in all of their losses. Justin Gaethje 2 knockout losses, Fiziev 1 knockout loss in his only loss, 5 losses, all 5 of those inside the distance, and Justin Gaethje's been to decision literally 1 time out of 10 fights. So 9 of 10 have finished, and the one that did go to decision probably should have been stopped multiple times. So I'm actually looking violence here and really like violence, but I think this price is going to continue to come down. So I'm going to sit back and wait, but I will probably be on the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm hoping to get it around something like minus 165, kind of like the Romanov-Volkov fight last week. People were betting the overs. I really like the fight doesn't go. I waited out, got a really good line, and I'm kind of hoping that happens here. Yeah, both these guys are super tough. But, man, this fight is going to be an all-out war. I don't see Justin Gaethje going out there and playing patty cake with Fiziev. I think he's going to have to make this a war.
Yeah.
So I think your over hits, personally, Weezy. I'm picking Fiziev late finish, but you're going to lose a couple of years off your life, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm fully prepared to maybe even have to just leave when that fight's on and then just watch it back. Just go back in my stream and watch it back and be like, all right, I know that I lost the bet or I know that I won the bet. Now I can watch it because – yeah, and betting an over in a Justin Gaethje fight is terrifying.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be terrifying, but I think you hit it personally. All right, main event time. We have Kamaru Usman going against Leon Edwards. We have the over/under set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 minus 140. Over 4.5 minus 200. The under 4.5 is plus 160. The fight goes to decision. Minus 140. The fight doesn't go to decision. Plus 110. I have no idea what to do here. Weezy, help me out.
All right, so let's look at the 5-round analytics here for welterweight fights. We can see that only 50% of welterweight fights that have been scheduled for 5 rounds have finished inside the distance. And I think that that's a function of having a couple of lay and pray grapplers being champions of this division in Kamaru Usman and George St. Pierre. So because of that, we've got a much lower finish rate than we do in the divisions around it. As we see, men's flyweight finishes 63%, men's bantamweight 65%, men's featherweight 58%, men's lightweight 70%, and then you get a 50% for welterweight, and it bumps right back up to 60% for middleweight. So only 50% of fights are finishing inside the distance, and we're getting a 47% implied probability at plus 110. So we're actually overpaying by about 2.38% based on that metric there. And then we see that Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards in 3-round fights have finished 6 of 18 times, only 33%. But in 5-round fights, let me just look at the numbers here. All these, of course, also available on Uncle Weezy's Patreon. As we go to 5-round fights for Kamaru Usman. This one. This one. So it's going to be this, and that. All right. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of his fights have been scheduled for 5 rounds. 4 of them have finished. So he's got an exactly 50% finish rate in his 5-round fights. And for Leon Edwards, he's had this one, this one, this one, and this one scheduled for 5, and only one of them finished. So, yeah, so 12, and it's 5 out of 12 of these guys combined 5-round fights have finished inside the distance. So, I'm sorry, wait a second. 8, 12, 4. Yeah, 5 out of 5. Yeah. So it's not a lot. I would say that this is probably going to go to decision, but Kamaru Usman getting finished for the first time in his career is very concerning here. And paying juice at minus 140 when only 50% of fights are going to decision, but we're paying 58. That's a little bit concerning, seeing as their last 5-round fight did finish inside the distance, but it feels like it was a little bit of a fluke. At this price, Brady, there's nothing really sticking out.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, just nothing sticking out at all. A fight that I don't really want to put money on, but a fight I'm looking forward to watch. That's for sure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I want to see how this works out. I want to see if Usman still has got that fire and still wants to be champion here because, these guys have fought 8 rounds already, and Usman has won like 7 of them. And then he got caught in the last minute of round 5 with a perfect head kick. So we're gonna have to see how he responds from this because Kamaru Usman hadn't lost since his professional debut, I think.
Yeah, it's been a long time since he lost, so we'll see how he battles back from getting knocked out in that way. So, especially at 35, 36 years old. All right. Yeah, we went through all 15 fights. WEEZY, go through the spots you like, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll try to come up with a nice probability parlay.
So fight doesn't go to decision for Miller versus Hardy at minus 130 is a spot I really like. The fight doesn't go to decision for Klein Herbert. It's not particularly priced in a great way, but I really feel like that one is not going to go to decision. So I kind of feel like that's potentially a good parlay piece. And that one was priced at, let me get it here, minus 190. If you want to do the 1-800 gambler fight of the week and bet for violence in the Wood Carolina fight at plus 250, I don't hate that. The Murphy Santos under 2.5 at plus 130 is a spot that's definitely sticking out. The Mokaev Filio over 2.5 rounds at plus 120, the analytics likes, but we have to also remember it's Filio making his UFC debut, so we're missing some information there as to how he's going to perform. The Barberena Nelson over 1.5 rounds at minus 165 is a good spot. And I also like the Gaethje Fiziev over 1.5 at minus 180. But the spots that I like the most, over 1.5 for Barberena Nelson at minus 165. Fight doesn't go to decision for Klein Herbert at minus 190. And Miller versus Hardy, fight doesn't go to decision at minus 130.
Sounds good. All right. For me, I might be taking a look at that Klein Herbert, either the under 2.5 at minus 150 on DraftKings, or maybe just laying that minus 190 there. I don't mind Vittori Delidze over 1.5, depending on the line. I got to wait to see where that's at. I'll be waiting on the Justin Gaethje Fiziev fight doesn't go, hoping to get a better price throughout the week. Don't mind like an over in like Usman Edwards, like over 1.5 as a parlay piece, or like over 2.5. I think those are kind of solid there. I like the fight doesn't go in the Hardy Miller fight. The fight doesn't go in the Santos and Murphy fight a lot. And then I think that is about it. Other than that, I'm probably going to sit back and wait to see where some of these lines move. But in terms of a probability parlay, WEEZY, what do you think we should go with?
What do you think about fight starts round 3 on FanDuel for Edwards versus Usman at minus 450? Fight starts round 3. Let's look at the analytics.
Yeah, it just sucks because fight starts round 3 on FanDuel is minus 450, but the over 1.5 on 365 is only minus 500.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's not as good for sure.
But I mean, it's safe, I think.
Yeah, fight starts round 3. for welterweights happens, almost 75% of the time. So anything around minus 300 is pretty decent there. And we saw what? Minus 450. So that's a little bit overpriced. Yeah, I mean, would you have a problem with doing fight doesn't go to decision for Klein Herbert at minus 190, parlayed with the over 1.5 for Barberena versus Nelson at minus 165?
Let me see what it comes out to. Fight doesn't go 190, and then and it is plus 145. Good plus money there.
Yeah, what do you think? You good with that?
Might be a little sweaty in the Nelson fight, but I like it.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I mean, like, that's the one thing that the prop template really did show us, that, yeah, it's going to be sweaty. But if we're looking at the data and we see that 81.5% of their fights have went over 1.5 rounds, and we're only paying 62.26%, let's just trust the data. Let that roll. This week's probability parlay: Klein Herbert fight doesn't go to decision, parlayed with the over 1.5 rounds. Brian Barberena versus Gunnar Nelson. Let's go.
Yep. But all overs are sweaty, so it's all right. All
Yes,
overs are sweaty.
That's right. They're all sweaty.
Yes.
Dude, all bets are sweaty. Who are we crapping? They're all sweaty, man. You know, I'm always nervous. So that's why I got so much gray hair, man. So yeah. Let's get sweaty. Let's get nervous, and let's make these books nervous by putting in the work, doing the data analysis, doing the tape study, finding the best spots, and cashing these bets.
Yep, I will be joining you on some gray hair if I end up deciding to bet minus 190 on Joanne Wood this week. But I'm not. I'm not. Don't worry, I'm not.
Don't do it.
Tempting, but I'm not. Oh my goodness. All right, Weezy, we did it. Great show. Lots of spots stuck out. Longer show, but we had so much to talk about. Let the people know where they can find you and what you have going on throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah, check me out on Twitter at MMA Weezy. You can check me out on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I will be going live on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Central Time for Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. We're going to break down all 15 of these fights from a stats and tape study perspective. I'm going to give you all my track bets. We're going to finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. We're just on an absolute tear with the ass shaving of the week. We got like 5 or 6 in a row now, Brady. Cashed a 5-unit bet on Carl Williams' money line last week. So we're doing really well. And then I'm going to give you guys a greasy 4-leg parlay on my channel on Friday. Probably do Ask Weezy this Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Central Time. And then on Wednesday on Pub Sports Radio, Brady, you, me, Gordo, and Monk will be doing the DFS show where we'll break down our best DraftKings lineups.
Sounds good. You have a busy week. I'm going on the Couch Warrior show, I think Wednesday night at 9:30. I'm going to be getting out my prediction video tomorrow on my channel, DFS by the Numbers. And then, of course, the usual live streams Friday and Saturday. So, yeah, lots going on for UFC 286. Make sure you guys check me out there. Like, subscribe, MMA Engine, Pub Sports Radio, DFS by the Numbers. That is where you can find me. And best of luck for UFC 286. We'll see you guys later.